Welcome to the Wise and Happy Life podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern science, and mindfulness, philosophy, and happiness practices blend with neuroscience, compassion, and common sense. Hosted by Bob Martin, meditation mentor, happiness coach, trial lawyer, and entrepreneur. This podcast explores how to live with grace, presence, and purpose in a complex world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of Asher Lester's podcast with Bob, me, and Wise and Happy Life podcast. We've been talking about the soundtrack that goes off, the music, the soundtrack that goes off in your brain, that constant patter of judgments and words and things that are in our brain, and emphasize and emphasize and point to. Wait, let me start over. Hey, folks, welcome back and welcome to a Wise and Happy podcast. We're back with Asher Lester talking about the soundtrack of our minds, and we're talking about how fear can restrict and constrict us and what we can do about it with things like breath work and meditation. And so, Asher, let me just continue. You were talking about the soundtrack of our minds, and you had a story to tell us.
Yeah, to me, for me, contained in this story was just so many lessons for myself in terms of the way that I was going to proceed in my life. You know, when I was first introduced to loving kindness meditation, that just the name of it. Now, I was just too sappy, and I was like, I'm never doing that, right? And this was after many years of meditating. And but I still just was not open to that meditation. And it just so happens that at the time there was a psychologist on the scene that said something along the lines of, that which you most need to find will be where you least want to look, right? And so I was contemplating that for a period of time, and then loving kindness came along, and I was like,
Let me repeat that again.
Yeah.
That you most need to find is where you are least likely to look.
Where you least want to look, right?
Where you least want to look.
Yeah, meaning
so true.
meaning that there's going to be resistance, right?
Right.
And I also love, Shinzen Young, who developed the Unified Mindfulness Program, also says something along the lines of, your practice works directly in proportion to how badly you need it, right? And so, and also when you're ready for it, ultimately. And, what was happening at this period of my life was I was recognizing what was going on internally with me in terms of my mental chatter. By the way, there's a really fantastic book called Chatter. I forget this guy's name, but I recommend everybody look into that, because it's a really helpful book. And the person who wrote it is a researcher on the things that goes on in our minds, which is so fascinating. What was going on in my mind at the time was that the way I interfaced with myself, if I interfaced with you the same way, it would be considered verbal assault.
Right? Right.
Yes, I was verbally assaulting myself all day long for the most ridiculous of things. I remember one time that I dropped a pen. That's all I did. I dropped a pen from my hand to the floor, and I called myself an effing idiot. Right? It's like, what?
Right.
And I had a moment after I said it, I was like, was that really necessary? Right? Is that really true that I'm an idiot for dropping a pen? So this was going on in my head. And then I hear what this psychologist said, and I have loving kindness coming at me from Sharon Salzberg. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna dedicate to this thing. I'm instead of experiencing that resistance and turning away from it, turning away from this thing, I'm gonna do what this psychologist said, and I'm gonna walk into this potential opportunity. And so I dedicated 90 days to this meditation that I had no desire to do. Right. And I can't tell you how quickly it flipped my internal chatter on its head. So yeah, maybe it is true that for some people that their soundtrack will never change, that all you can do is put it in the background. But I can tell you that for me, the soundtrack changed so dramatically that I can honestly say that I would put about a 90% negative self-referential chatter that was going on throughout the day. There was very little I had to say about myself that was positive, and flipped it to where it was 10% negative, 90% positive.
hmm
And there
Well,
were,
if you think about the tenets of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, right? You're a psychology guy, so you know that when something happens, there's a thought that comes up kind of automatically, and where it comes up from is your database.
yeah,
All of your experiences and the things that you've been taught and the things that you've experienced and everything that's gone into your entire database of experiences creates a narrative
mm,
that's within your mind. And when something happens, it stimulates a thought response, and the thought then leads to an emotion.
yep,
The emotion then creates other thoughts, and if you can catch that thought and make a change. But then again, I think one of the things that CBT lacks
mm,
without meditation as a side of, without a skill, the skill of meditation is catching the thought. It's just not easy for folks, and that's what, of course, what we do in meditation. But what you're talking about, I believe, is actually learning how to change the database,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's so that when something happens, because you and I, I can probably think of people in our lives that we just were always amazed that you go them with some complaint that you have about something in your life or
Mm,
something that somebody did to you, and their response is just such a loving, kind
yes,
response, and it just comes up for them naturally. It's like who they are.
yeah,
And you say, gee, I wish I was more like that. And what you're saying, if I hear you right, what you're saying is you can be.
yes, you
you
absolutely
you
can.
just you just have to change the database. And again, going back to what we were talking about before, it takes a little time, and you have to trust the process and don't quit before the miracle happens, right?
Right. Well, that's why I put a 90-day rule on myself when I
Yeah.
first started.
Uh-huh.
It's like 30 days isn't enough. I know that. We're going to go 90 days. We're going to do it every day, and we're going to see what
hmm
happens. And honestly,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
life changing. I think some of my resistance is what I found since I did this was that a lot of my resistance is very consistent with the resistance that I hear from other people, in particular, type A personalities that
hmm
shy away from heart-centered practices. They hear love and kindness and they're like, nah, never doing that, right? They're afraid when you dig a little deeper and you have more of a conversation with them, there's this fear that they're going to lose their edge, right? Think about it. If you look at, all of the huge tech CEOs or any CEO that you hear, but people like Steve Jobs comes to mind immediately. It seems like there's this brashness, there's this way of being with other people and probably also with themselves that is brash and mean and cruel. And this is the way that you accomplish the things that these men have accomplished, right? It's like
hmm
we have this belief in our head that that's a reality. And I think that
hmm
we also adopt that for ourselves, where we believe that if we don't talk to ourselves in this really horrible way, then there's no way we're going to be successful. We're not going to achieve the American dream and beyond, right? We're not going to do these things. And here's what I found in doing that practice for 90 days.
hmm
One is that all of that is an absolute lie that we tell ourselves, right?
Right.
For why we tell ourselves that, I don't know. All I know was that for me, I realized it was a lie. Not only did I not become a doormat, not only did I not lose my edge, I became better as a human
hmm
being. I became better at everything I did just because of that one practice. Why? Because the way I interfaced with myself, I didn't know until I did this practice. If you asked me if I was a good person, I would say yes. If I treated other people nice, I would say yes. I didn't know the extent to which the way I interfaced with myself had a direct impact on other people, had a direct impact on the way that I interfaced with other human beings around me that I really cared about. And I didn't know until that soundtrack was modified and certain aspects of it were turned way down and certain things were turned way up. What was turned up was that I became more of what you might call, or I created what might be considered an inner compassionate coach, right.
Hmm.
And once I did that, um, it completely changed the way I interface with other people in a way that I didn't know. There was still something left there. There was still progress to be made there, and it was truly one of the best things I ever did was notice that resistance to loving kindness and see it as a door of opportunity and walk through that door. That.
Yeah, let me just stop for a second and help the people to understand what this practice is.
Mhm.
It is a simple practice of repetitively blessing. You bless yourself, you bless others, and you continue to bless people, kind of in an outgoing circle of starting with yourself and then blessing somebody that you know that you love and you know loves you, which is usually easy to open your heart up. And you practice blessing yourself, and but more importantly, blessing that the loved one.
Hmm.
And from that, you learn what it feels like to open your heart. And I know that it sounds a little bit woo-wee, but Asher, I think that you'll agree with me. There is an actual physical sensation
Yeah.
of opening your heart.
Yeah.
It is a feeling that permeates your entire body. I don't want to get too woo-wee, and I don't want to get into things that are above my pay grade as to what the universe is consisting of, but it's almost as if there is some kind of energy that fills your body,
Yeah. Well.
and you feel lighter. And then once you have mastered blessing someone that you love, you practice on blessing someone that's a neutral, like the clerk at the Food Lion. And then when you've mastered that, you move out to blessing somebody that might be a little difficult in your life,
Mhm.
and then someone that might be a little bit more difficult. And Asher, I have to confess to you that I still practice.
Mhm.
And at the very end of my meditation, I practice opening my heart up to my ex-wife, which
Mhm.
I still find is a little difficult.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm still working on that one. I'm still working on
There's
that one.
there's such
But
value in that, right?
but what you're doing every time you're doing this, you're actually changing your database. You're
You are.
building different neural pathways, and eventually what happens is that instead of a selfish or a self-judging thought coming up, a thought of kindness and a thought of blessing, it comes up because that's what you filled your database with.
That's right.
I mean, it's really as simple as that. Yes.
Hmm. It is. And what's interesting about that particular practice is a lot of people, where the woo woo comes in is where they think that you're sending these things out into the
Hmm.
universe and somehow affecting
Right,
you as a
right.
person. Right. And just to be clear, oftentimes, or at least the mantra that I tend to use is may you be safe, be healthy, be happy, live with
Hmm.
ease. And saying it to all the groups that you mentioned, including myself at some point in the meditation. And when you're saying those things, you're not sending out these rays of goodness to other people. This is about softening your attitude
Hmm.
toward these people and also toward yourself. And what's wonderful, I love that you mentioned your ex-wife, because you can do this actually anytime. If you're on a phone call with somebody who is challenging in some capacity during that phone call, you can actually pause and say to yourself, may you be safe, be healthy, be happy, live with ease. Send this from you in your head to soften your own attitude. It's sending it to you from your head to your body, essentially, right? To
Hmm.
soften around
Yeah.
this person and around this experience. And what it does is it promotes equanimity and promotes in the body and in the mind this ability to be able to move forward skillfully, which to
Hmm.
me is the most important part. Why do any of this unless it makes you a better
Right.
human, meaning that you become
Well,
more skillful in your
you
interaction
know,
with other
when
people?
when you say makes you a better human, I've been thinking about that. I throw this idea past you, but all the great wisdom teachers, from the Buddha to the Christ to the Gandhis and all of these folks, everybody, we always think of them as having come to make us better people and make the world a better place.
Hmm.
But lately, I've been thinking that all they really wanted for us to be happy.
Mm.
And and I'm giving up on the idea of making people better people. I
Mm.
just want to make people happy people.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it just happens that coincidentally, the path to happiness is one of loving kindness, generosity, and of spirit, and compassion, empathy, wisdom, understanding, heart, knowledge, health, knowledge. These are the paths. Because if you look at people that are greed driven and hate driven and aversion driven and ignorance driven, they're just not happy people,
Right.
right?
That's right.
But you look at people who are kind driven, heart driven, people that can go to a funeral and sit with the grieving
Yes.
and hold their hand and not be sucked up in their own mind by the grief, but be present for the other.
Beautiful.
These are the folks that seem to be the happiest folks.
Yep.
So I'm just saying, it's all just about being happy.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm being a little selfish. I also think, that from a Christian perspective, you know, Jesus came and he said, here's the two rules: love your God with your heart, your soul, and all your mind.
Mm.
Well, if your mind is all, future, you're in
Yep.
your future and past based and anxiety based, and you all got that anticipatory anxiety, you don't have much left to love God with.
Yep.
So maybe the commandment was clear up your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't love yourself,
Mm.
how can you love your neighbor?
Yeah.
You know,
Which is contained in that lesson that I learned in terms of
which is
loving
contained,
kindness. I just didn't
right?
realize how the way I interface with myself made it really difficult to be skillful with other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then and you're happy. Are you a happy person, Asher?
I, this is such an interesting question because to me, happiness doesn't come easy. It comes with these skills, right? It comes with the skill of
Right.
recognizing
There's
the
a work
mindfulness.
ethic of happiness.
Yes, there's an absolute work ethic, and it's an intentional
Yeah.
skill more than anything. To me,
Mm-hmm.
it's an intentional skill, right? What am I attending to now? It's just like that study. Um, I think it was a University of Pennsylvania study where they put beepers on people's bodies, right? A pager, a
Mm-hmm.
little thing on the.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Most people don't know what those are anymore, right? You and I do, but it's a little
Right,
box
right.
that they put on their belt and it buzzes. And so, what the researchers would do, they put these little things on it. I don't remember how many people; it was a lot. Put them on their belts, and the study was anytime you get buzzed, you stop and you have a journal and you write down the activity that you're engaged in. And then the second thing you write down is whether you were present to that activity. And what they found was that the more present a person was, even if it was during activities that they did not particularly enjoy, the happier
Mm-hmm.
they were because they were not stuck in their head on the rumination from the past, making them depressed, and the future tripping, making them anxious. Instead, they were fully present in washing dishes or whatever it was that they were doing. And the more present a person was over the course of their lifespan, the happier and more fulfilled they were. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's an attentional skill that
Mm-hmm.
anybody can cultivate over the course of their lifetime.
Yeah. And let me tell you a story about one of my students. She takes the course on campus, and she signs up for it. Takes it. It's an elective, obviously, so she wants to get a benefit out of it. It's meditation. So my students log each 10-minute meditation, and that comes to me, and I comment on. So I can see that she's not practicing. So I ask her to stay after class, and I ask her why she's not practicing, because she obviously wanted to get the benefit, and she obviously knows that you can't just go to the gym and look at the machines. You got to get on them. If you want to get a
Yeah, for
benefit, if
sure.
you don't practice, it ain't gonna do anything. So we go through this conversation. It starts out with, I don't know why I don't, do things. Then I sabotage myself.
Mm.
Finally, she breaks into tears and she says, I just don't think that I have a right to be happy.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so we did some somatic stuff, and I asked her where she felt that in her body and where the pain was. And
Mm,
finally, I got her to, and she was able to locate a particular spot in her body where she could say that's where it hurt.
mm,
And when we got there, she had stopped crying
mm-hmm,
and she was completely calm. And I said, "You notice that you're not crying anymore?" And she goes, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Well, because, you're always thinking about what you failed at in the past,
mm,
and what you're not going to be able to do in the future. But right now, here, you can't feel a physical sensation unless it's the present moment.
mm,
And you know that there's no danger here."
mm.
And that's when she finally got what it means to be present.
Yeah. Wow.
Because in her entire life was spent in the past and the future.
Mm,
And then she all of a sudden, oh, that's what that means.
wow.
And from that point on, to the end of the class, she didn't miss one practice.
Wow. That gave me chills. Thanks for sharing that. That's an
That was
incredible story.
one of those cool stories. Yeah. So yeah, being and that's why we do body work and breathing and everything else, because you can't do it any other time but right now.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
tell us a little bit about, before we run out of time, I want you to tell us a little bit about meditation,
Yeah.
about some of the misconceptions that you notice people have about meditations, and also some of the misconceptions that people have about breathing.
Yeah, I think the greatest misconception that comes to mind about meditation is that you have to do it for a certain period of time and you have to sit a certain way and it has to be isolative. One of the greatest things that I've learned about meditation is meditation, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, right? To me, it's
Hmm.
just an attentional skill that we are trying
Hmm.
to hone over the course of time. We have concentration power, sensory clarity, and equanimity. And what's interesting about concentration power, everybody can do this. Just hold your finger up in front of your face, about 6 inches, right? And you put your finger in focus visually. What happens to everything around the finger? It goes out of focus. Now put everything around the finger in focus. What happens to the finger? It goes out of focus, right? We do this shift all day long. It just happens to us, right? It's incidental. This happens, the very same thing happens when, Bob, you and I go to dinner and we're chit chatting and I can hear you, you can hear me. And then all of a sudden I hear something really juicy at the table next to me, right? And all of a sudden I can't hear you, but I can hear this person next to me quite clearly. You went out of focus. This person next to me is in focus. But it
Hmm.
just kind of happens to us. We have this ability that we don't harness and use on purpose throughout the day. And so, one of the greatest skills that I've learned was, man, I forget what meditation teacher said this, that meditation is not a speed, right? Mindfulness is not a speed. The idea is that we bring these skills into the speed of life. And so, how can I use that shift, that attentional shift, foreground, background shift, putting one thing in focus, another thing in the background, out of focus, but still there and still powerful? And the way I did that was promote rest in the background, no matter what I'm doing. Even now, when you and I are talking, I want to have a certain activation in my nervous system, but I'm still promoting rest in the rest of the body. I'm always thinking
Hmm.
about what muscles are necessary for me to accomplish the task at hand. Right now, it's just sitting, talking to you, and everything else is restful. If I'm driving, for example, for whatever reason, my nervous system just automatically starts to tighten up my core. Part of my goal is to notice that and to release that rest. If I'm having a conversation with a person, having that conversation, I can see you, I can hear you, I can feel the emotions associated with it, but I'm resting the rest of the body, constantly promoting rest in the body. If I'm moving from one door to another, so I'm moving from my house to my car, from my car to my house, or from one building to the next, while in motion, I'm bringing mindfulness to the movements, right? I can still be thinking of something as well. I can be thinking about something in my mind that's important, but rest is always in the background. So think 80-ish% of your attention on the task at hand, 20% of the attention is on rest in the background, promoting rest. And what that does is it creates momentum of practice. It
Hmm.
also makes it less likely that when I experience something that brings about reactivity, emotional reactivity in my body, that reactivity is not going to spike as high as historically it would. It also doesn't stay high as long, near as long as it used to. So it metabolizes much quicker, right? And it's been one of the most powerful practices, and one of my
Yeah. Now.
favorite practices to bring just into everyday life that I think is super helpful is how many times do we walk through a door, right? I keep looking back at my door over here.
Uh-huh.
How many times do we open a door, walk through it, and then close it? How many cabinets do we open a day? How many times do we open the refrigerator? All of those to me are an opportunity, very short, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, to bring mindfulness to what it is that we're doing, right? To check in with the body. And if you were asking about misconceptions of meditation and mindfulness, the biggest
Hmm.
misconception to me is that you have to sit for 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night, or 10 minutes, or whatever it is. Let's bring mindfulness into our day 10 seconds at a time, 5 seconds at a time. And what
Hmm.
happens is you have a cumulative effect over the course of time. It
Right. Right.
doesn't mean that you don't sit quietly and do meditation, formal meditations. It's great, but do both, right?
Do both.
Do both.
And so one of the things that people wonder about is, well, how do you learn that? And one of the ways that I think it's helpful is, the archetypical standard instructions for meditation is simply put your attention on your breath, put your attention on a candle. Immediately, your mind's going to go nuts.
Yeah.
It's going to go wild. It's going to start thinking about something. But at some point, because you had the intention to put your attention on the breath,
Mhm.
your mind's going to go, psst, hey, you're not paying attention to your breath. That that moment when your mind reminds you of what your intention was,
Mhm.
that's the moment of mindfulness.
Yes.
And
Yes.
when you let your mind go nuts and you notice that it's gone nuts, and then you come back and you begin again and it goes nuts, and it tells you, that process helps you to learn and become more familiar with what it feels like to be awake.
Yep.
Psst, hey, you're not listening. And to be in default mode,
Oh,
and
yes.
that focus not focus.
Yep.
So doing these little practices over and over and over again, they teach you what it feels like, and then, as you say, you can bring it into your everyday life and grab it and have those 5 and 10 seconds and the like. But I think that it is important to do some practice. I
Absolutely.
mean, to do some practice to gain the basic skill. It's like if you want to go play tennis, you got to hit the ball against the wall,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You
For sure.
you can be shown. Somebody can tell you this is how you hold the racket, and this is how you do a forearm,
Mhm.
but you have to hit the ball against the wall 200 times before you get it.
That's right. Yes.
Now it doesn't, like you say, it doesn't take 30 minutes and it doesn't take 2 years, and you get it pretty quickly. But you just like at the gym, you got to get on the machine.
Yeah, and I love that, especially the gym metaphor, right? Because it's just like doing pull-ups makes your biceps stronger. Every time you wake up to the fact that you're distracted, I love the way you put it earlier.
Uh huh.
You wake up to this fact that you are distracted. Your brain's whispering to you, "Hey, you're not paying attention to what you were supposed to pay attention to, or what your goal was to pay attention to." And you bring your attention back. It's like doing a pull-up for your brain.
Uh huh. Right.
So I love that metaphor. But I can
And the
also
secret
say,
though, the secret though is not is as soon as you do that, you're going to get this flood of judgments of saying how screwed up and how much you failed. But even that flood of judgments is helpful because you get to see it and notice it.
yes,
And after a while, you say, well, that's just silly.
yes,
And it kind of like, you can't make it go away, but you can let it go away,
yes. And what's amazing is
right?
that it can go away.
It
I can't
can go
remember the
away.
last time I had a judgment come up for not paying attention or losing my attention. I like to
Hmm.
think of it like a flashlight, right? If you shine a light on something and the light just kind of veers off, all you have to do is move that light. You don't have to say anything, just move the light,
Right.
and the light is your
Hmm.
attention. If you notice your attention drift to something else, then you just simply move the light of your attention back to the normal thing. It doesn't require an
Right.
internal dialogue
Yeah.
to do that, right?
And you're used to the fact that it does it. A lot of people worry about their minds run too much, but it's really just an evolutionary device that our minds learned to scan for danger when we lived in the jungle for 1.7 million generations.
Yeah.
So our minds normally scan the environment all the time because evolutionarily that's how we're constructed.
Hmm.
The trick is that since we're not living in the jungle anymore, we're living in a modern society, we have to uh, fine tune
Mm.
the scanning so that it's helpful instead of distracting.
Yep.
And that's when you mention intentional attention,
That's right.
being intentional about things. That's what we're doing. We're fine tuning. It's really great. This has been a great conversation, Asher. I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. How can folks find out more about you, follow you? What do you have to offer?
Hmm. I teach 5 6 week online breathing meditation fundamentals courses. I like to combine the two. I think there's a real strong synergistic effect between
Hmm.
breathing and meditation worlds. And so I do a fundamentals of breathing and meditation online course over Zoom. There's a new one coming up in the latter part of August. The easiest way to find me is online at nervousapes.com. But you can also find me at you can also find me on social media with that same name.
That's funny. Nervousapes.com, which is like just ties into the whole evolutionary
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Cool. I can't thank you enough. This has been wonderful. I hope maybe we can do it again.
Love to. This has been so fun. Thanks, Bob.